Long before Captain America Winter Soldier, we had a Black Widow Nick Fury team up, but they were the bad guys. I'm Seth and it's day 38 of the Ticket Stub Movie Club. Today's film, The Spirit, directed by Frank Miller. Question of the day, what's your favorite superhero film from the aughts? This one starring Gabriel Mott, Samuel L. Jackson, Eva Mendes, Scarlett Johansson, Sarah Paulson, just a stacked lineup of hotties. This movie is an example of why a director's role is so important on a set. And even though the skill set may seem effervescent or intangible, it is deeply important to the tone of a movie coming across correctly. Everything about this movie should work. We have the cinematographer Bill Pope. He did The Matrix. We have David Newman. He scored most of your 90s nostalgia. The cast that I listed are all huge A-list actors now, either in TV or movies. And even our director is the writer of the seminal Batman work, The Dark Knight Returns. And yet, this movie is a convoluted, plotless, pedantic, misogynistic mess. Discordant emotional tones run throughout, and in a single scene we can go from sexy to funny to deadly serious at breakneck whiplash speeds, sometimes within the same line. A better director could balance this kind of stuff, but Miller just doesn't have the skills to step up into the director's seat. All I want to know about this one is how the conversation went when they sat Samuel L. Jackson down to tell him, within this movie, you will have the wildest makeup, the craziest costumes, and we will put you firmly in front of a photo of Adolf fucking Hitler in full Nazi costume. I can't imagine that conversation was anything other than hilarious and or absolutely jaw-dropping. I was really excited for this one walking into it as a kid. Superhero movies were just starting to really take off and become grounded at this point. We just talked about The Dark Knight that came out earlier this year. I saw this one on Christmas Day, so I literally went to the theater on Christmas Day to go see this. So I was full of holiday spirit. The hype was high. That was not a spirit pun. I apologize. And I remember walking out of this one feeling similarly as I did walking out of Speed Racer, which we also just talked about. Watching as an adult, I was curious why I felt that way. My cinema language has definitely developed over the last almost 2 decades. And honestly, I wasn't far off from that feeling. There's something kitsch and kind of campy about both of these movies, but the way that they're adapting their source material is totally discordant from each other. Something that was brought up in a lot of the critiques at the time is that The Spirit does not canonically have superpowers. They added that for this movie, and that becomes the entire plot of the film, if you want to say that this movie has a plot, because I tracked this last night. I kept my notes out. I was reading through the Wikipedia. I was reading through the IMDb. I wanted to make sure I missed nothing. This movie borderline does not have a plot. The Spirit wants to know why he has this healing factor. That is the first hour of this movie, is just asking that question. And then when it's finally revealed to him when he's kidnapped, at the point in the movie where we need to finally reveal this, we find out that the octopus has done the same thing to him that he did to himself. There was no real backstory behind it other than this guy just happened to be a cop's dead body that they injected with a serum. And this is one of those cases that I bring up on Film Rescue all the time, where the movie offers you a better story within the story and then decides to ignore it completely. Eva Mendes playing Sans Serif has arguably the best backstory that you could possibly have to tell a story around, and they put it entirely in the background. She gets 3 scenes total. And I think a big reason why they did that is because this movie's deeply copaganda. The Spirit is an ex-cop. He returns to life to continue policing, but now in an illegal vigilante way. He is totally on the collar of the cops because the cops are the first people he goes to when he comes back to life. Sans Serif is the only expressly anti-cop character within the story. It's key and important to her backstory, but the movie worships the police. It doesn't worship the police's actions sometimes, but this is a really apologetic term for people that want to believe that cops are superheroes behind badges without powers. That's Frank Miller to a T. That's why he chooses to write these vigilante comics. He believes in the white idea of what cops are and not the actual explanation of how they police in our world. The movie has to run up into those limitations because part of the story is no one can catch the octopus unless they do it outside of the arms of the law. So the movie expressly recognizes the law is incapable of succeeding in justice, but has no interest in exploring that. And again, from there, some of the background stuff about the blood of Heracles, the golden fleece, and that kind of stuff, all of that sits in the background in like a pulp fiction-y open the briefcase but don't show anything kind of way. At least the fucking MCU is bold enough to come out and say, no, Thor is a real guy in this world and we'll show him to you. This movie can't even be begrudged to give us a visual backstory for all of this demigod shit. From there, more of my negative critiques are that the movie's deeply misogynistic. Oh my god, it is so misogynistic that it wants to flaunt male sexuality in front of women to the point of upsetting them. That is text in the movie. We have entire shots dedicated to women's cleavage. The costuming is meant to exaggerate all feminine aspects. Scarlett Johansson's eyelashes, when she's first introduced, are comically long. And listen, I love a good costume. I love a camp costume. I think that costume would go fucking hard on the red carpet. The costumer didn't do a bad job here. It is the point within the story that it's being used for that becomes the issue. And this movie's only 103 minutes long, and it feels 2.5 hours long. It is so slow and plotting, and all of his narration about his fucking edible complex for the city, which again is text within the movie. The movie calls out the Oedipal complex and then compares it to the Electra complex because it's much more interested in pointing out women as being the issue rather than exploring this dude is like a flat, shallow fucking misogynist. Even our police captain, whose daughter is played by Sarah Paulson, is calling this shit out to his face. He's denying it. He acts as if he's doing what is natural to him. That means that it's key to this person's inner character. Ugh. The Spirit isn't so much a superhero as he is a fuck machine. Because when he's not fucking, he's fighting. And yeah, we're not getting explicit sex scenes, but he literally wants to fuck the embodiment of death, every woman around him and every man around him, but he won't get intimate with them, so he has to punch them. And I'm not shitting you. There is an entire sequence where he punches the octopus in the face so often that it becomes phallic fucking imagery. He is fisting the villain in a puddle. I don't know if this was Frank Miller's vision, if he's intending to do this or not. And I say not because the tone of this movie is so all over the place. It will go from absolute camp into deadly fucking serious at the drop of a hat. My war against Rotten Tomatoes ends here. This is scored appropriately on Rotten Tomatoes. Now that I've got all the negatives out of the way, let's jump into the positives, which I do have a lot, because there are a lot of deeply, deeply artistic creatives on this staff, and they're really pulling to make a good movie. The look of this movie has aged well. Robert Rodriguez invented this in his garage. They are aping this style into a blockbuster format with millions of more dollars, and so it can look really good. Bill Pope knows how to shoot the fuck out of a scene. The score really feels like it's starting to copy that Danny Elfman kind of 1989 Batman feel, and I get it. They add a little extra to the instrumentation to give it its own flair. There's a country guitar that can pop in sometimes, which I think was a really apropos addition to this like Americana protagonist. And then there's lots of bits that really do work in the movie. I think about all the t-shirts on the Henchmen where we start off from these like lofty Latin ideas and by the end we have huevos rancheros. That works for me. That is hilarious. If this movie was a straight comedy, I think that aspect would have been one of the funniest, most memorable aspects. Samuel L. Jackson knows exactly what kind of movie he's in here. He is the only one who is acting, I think, deeply appropriately for his character. Eva Mendes seems to have been convinced that she's in a much more serious movie. Gabriel Mott, who you know from Suits, is doing as much as he can with what he's been given. But again, the tonal whiplash that can happen line to line for this character is so much that I don't even know if a really seasoned director could have done this material. I do really love the comic book effects that they can get by stacking a lot of these images. Some of the parkour stuff where he's running across the rooftops looks better than almost any Batman movie I've ever seen. There is something to be said about comicizing your movie, for lack of a real word. The movie is violent and gory. I do enjoy when something's willing to really push that as far as it can go. I'm thinking specifically about the guy that commits suicide and the back of his head's blown out, and we see that in silhouette with our character standing inside of his head. The detective's literally trying to get inside of the head of the victim. That's excellent. That's all on Bill Pope. That man knows how to shoot the fuck out of a scene, like I said. Scarlett Johansson also may know what kind of movie she's in because she's giving a very camp performance. She also gets the last laugh at the end of the movie, which I do appreciate. And honestly, I could probably forgive a lot of the poor direction if there had been a cool plot to wrap it around, but there's not. If I had to sum this movie up in one word, it would just be silly, which there are worse things for a movie to be. Though I could see this being one of those so bad it's good movies that people really enjoy visiting to watch the goofy, silly, over-the-top aspects of it. And I'm not gonna lie, Samuel L. Jackson delivering the line, "Toilets are always funny," is funny. It works. I just wish it were in service of a better plot. I wish it were in service of a movie whose tonality it was able to figure out better. It feels sometimes like it's trying to satirize the overly dark Sin City, Dark Knight aspects of things, but then also wants to revel in them, so that makes it technically more parody. I think the worst insult I could launch against this movie is that it feels like it was written by a 14-year-old Ryan Reynolds. Somebody that loves superheroes and wants to make fun of superheroes to look cool and wants to have its cake and eat it too. In contrast, the biggest compliment that I could give the movie, its visual style has not been duplicated since. Even Robert Rodriguez with his later on Machete movies, which will end up in this list, doesn't quite aspire to what they were able to capture on film here. And I think it's important to separate a movie's visual language from its tone, because these are some of the skill sets that I talked about at the top that a director needs to have. A director needs to be able to know what is being delivered, not only scene to scene, but shot to shot. The emotionality within any single sentence of a performance leads into the next one. And Miller does not understand that. You can tell that he writes for the page. You can tell that he writes for people to fill in with their imagination. And when you're presenting something on screen, largely imagination gets pulled out. We are presenting the imagination at this point. I know the more misogynist takes have been lobbed against Frank Miller's since his early career. The man honestly does not seem like he likes women at all, and maybe closeting some feelings about why he makes these big, buff, sexy, oiled up superhero stories. We talked about Joel Schumacher at the beginning of this adventure when I was talking about the Phantom of the Opera and specifically his touches on Batman. That's a creator that understands, actually, it's okay to have a little Oedipal complex, a little Electra complex. You can work stuff out through your comic book stuff, but you need to understand it. You can't work it out on the screen for us, or it starts to look like someone screaming in therapy. I'm looking at the counter and I'm seeing that this review has probably gone on long enough. The next movie is Paul Blart Mall Cop, so at least tonality won't be the issue here, but I think that's going to do it for the Spirit. I don't know if I ever revisit this one. This movie finishes up the 2008s for us. We're moving into 2009 with Paul Blart Mall Cop next. I will see you tomorrow.